In today's episode, I am talking to Michel Dahdah. He is the co-founder of Rand Labs. Rand Labs, MyAlgo Wallet, Algo Explorer, and also the co-founder of C3 Protocol. If you're interested in Algorand, you want to watch this entire thing. But before that, a word from our sponsor, Headline Inc. Headline is building essential Algorand ecosystem tools, and it's a bear market, and they don't stop. They're not stopping. They're acquiring things. Algo Trade, Algo Options. They have Algo Cloud, Forum Social Network. This thing is growing. HDL, their native token, keeps on getting more and more utility. And look, folks, if Algorand needs it, Headline is building it. All right, without further ado, here it is, Michel Dahdah. Hey everybody, welcome to the ReCoop. I'm Cooper Daniels, and I'm a guy that knows a little about a lot. And today I have a very special guest. I am here with Michel Dahdah. He is the co-founder of Rand Labs, which is responsible for the MyAlgo wallet and Algo Explorer, and also the co-founder of C3 Protocol. How are you doing, Michel?
Hey Cooper, great. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah,
Excited
thanks
to talk
for.
about it. There's a lot to talk about.
Oh my gosh, I know. Well, you've been tweeting about EVM compatibility on layer ones through a layer two. We have a governance proposal, which I know you've also been vocal about. You have C3 protocol coming. We have state proofs coming. There's so much to talk about. So I'll
Yeah.
try not to keep you too long. But before we actually do that, in case there's anybody out there that maybe is familiar with you but doesn't quite know your story, I know you've been with Algorand since basically the beginning, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So can you
So
give? Yeah.
maybe I should get some background there. So I was based in Boston back then. Recently moved to Miami, but during my time there, I was very involved the Bitcoin activity happening in MIT,
Mm-hmm.
and like with the DCI, among other things. And among one of those events, I met Silvio, probably back in 2017 or 2018. I don't remember well.
Mm-hmm.
I started deep diving alongside Pablo, my co-founder, on the technology, and David Garcia from Borderless. We had like a very high hopes for what Silvio was building on Algorand back then, and then we kind of were thinking, how can we capitalize on this technology, right? I mean, we think it's the way they're tackling many of these problems is very novel, nothing like we've seen in any other blockchain that we had worked in back then, and that's where we thought maybe let's create Rand Labs to become like an infrastructure provider on this network that we hope is going to be
Mm-hmm.
very important in 10 years from now, right? And that's when we decided to found the Rand Labs at the late 2018.
Mm-hmm.
Like they were still building the blockchain back then, and yeah, like the first product we released was the Explorer before like right on testnet launch, and we've been building on Algorand ever since.
Wow. So wait. So what was it that had you meet Silvio? How did that happen? You weren't a student.
No, no,
No,
no.
no, no.
I don't remember. I think it was at I don't
Something.
remember. Maybe there was some cool like blockchain dinners hosted by some of the professors at MIT. I used to attend those. I think
Mm-hmm.
he was there, or maybe in a Bitcoin conference. I really don't remember well. But
Right.
that's when we started discussing how to get us more involved. And
And
um,
just maybe to just to humor me here. So going back even a little further than that, what brought you to blockchain and cryptocurrency in general?
oh
Like,
yeah,
yeah.
so that's very interesting. So
Mhm.
I'm Venezuelan. So Venezuela, failed currency. Um, but also the electricity in Venezuela is subsidized. It's free, literally. And a lot of my friends were mining Bitcoin back in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
So I bought some machines and I started mining Bitcoin with them. Even though I was here, I had some friends host those machines, and that's how I got into the rabbit hole.
Oh wow.
I was building a consulting company back then called Algo Depth. Interestingly enough, nothing related to Algorand,
Oh, that's
more
funny.
like machine learning implemented to financial markets.
Mm-hmm.
And that led like I started a fund called Algo Ledger, coincidentally as well, back in 2016, where we started investing in companies. I had some partners give me money, and
That's
we
right.
did a good job. We were early on all the ICO craze. I met a lot of people in the industry, very talented individuals, and that led me also to Algorand. And I thought I have to focus my time in one thing, and I thought Algorand was the right place to focus it on.
That's funny that you were calling everything Algo something before, because it seems
It's
like
crazy. Yeah,
on Algorand, we all want everything to be Algo this, Algo that.
yeah.
And you
And
were doing
Randlabs
that
was
even.
first. Actually, it was called Algo Fabric
Oh,
before we
really?
decided to change it to Randlabs.
You're like, we've done too many Algo somethings.
Yeah, yeah,
Let's
yeah.
go for the second half of the word. I like it too.
Exactly.
And you mentioned David Garcia and Pablo. So you're also a general partner at Borderless Capital, right?
Yeah,
Or you
so
were?
I helped start it before I decided to really get more involved on the building side, that rather than the venture side. I thought it was much more interesting. So I'm an advisor to the GPE. I have some equity there, and I also an investor. So
Got it.
I'm a limited partner in Borderless as well.
So yeah, you have your hands in all of the Algorand stuff here. So okay, so you meet Silvio in 2017. You build Rand Labs with Pablo, and now it's Algo Explorer, MyAlgo Wallet. What's going on there? Is there anything to talk about? Like, I mean, we all use the MyAlgo Wallet and Algo Explorer. These things have just become part of anybody that's very into Algorand knows these things. Are there any updates or anything you'd like to share about those two?
Yeah, I mean, like we recently launched the login portal in the Algo Explorer so that creators and builders can verify their assets and applications. We have
Mm-hmm.
a very like we have a very cool roadmap on that end. We want to also enable use cases for like the normal persons that are not necessarily creators or builders, so that they can have like push notification systems, address books, among many other things,
Mm-hmm.
and also helping projects add a lot of information to them. The idea is to get all the point to where a project or an application using API standards, among other things, can literally create their entire front page on the Algo Explorer, right? So that we get closer to a world where Algo Explorer is behaving like an initial page for all these projects. Like you should get to a point where you can build your own application UI without even having to have your own client, but just
All right.
using API standards to construct that on the Algo Explorer. And similarly, on MyAlgo, we have a big roadmap. We want to focus on developer tooling this year as well, helping people manage applications, deploy them, among other things. We are also looking to build new products that leverage both MyAlgo and Algo Explorer, similar to Ganache, where you can build your own custom instance of the Algorand blockchain in like in a virtual simulator, so that you can test your different applications.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, just looking at that, I think it's a unique perspective of Algorand where the main wallet or one of the main wallets and the Algo Explorer are owned by the same entity. So we want to find ways in which we can leverage that to drastically improve the user experience, right? So that's where a lot of our strategy is focusing on
Right.
in the coming year.
So you're also coming soon, I believe, C3 protocol, right? C3, which is cross-chain settlements, essentially, correct? Yeah.
Yeah, so basically C3 protocol is looking to disrupt FTX and Binance. That's kind of how we're seeing it. The idea is that our design enables us to have a very high throughput, low latency matching system by
Mm-hmm.
having an off-chain server handle order flow, but using Algorand for settlements where it doesn't matter what blockchain your assets are, if it's Ethereum, Binance, Smart Chain, Solana, whatever it is, you can block collateral and execute trades on C3's matching engine, then use Algorand for the settlement of those trades.
Right.
Matches happen instantly, settlement happens 4 seconds after, and whenever you want to withdraw your funds, you can do that regardless of where your funds are locked in. So the idea is to have a bet board, remain totally decentralized, non-custodial, and trustless, while
Right.
having the same like throughput and user experience that you would experience in a centralized exchange. And like we have this very noble design that enables this, and we're very excited about that, and as well as our partners, which we'll be announcing soon.
Yeah, we'll hear like Stacy Warden, the CEO of the foundation, or you'll hear a lot of the people around Algorand talk about how the future could be Algorand as the settlement layer for all chains in a way. Do you see that is a possibility, or and
I
is
mean, like
C3 protocol?
if you look at like state proofs
Yeah.
The security guarantees of them are the same, almost the same as the guarantees of the blockchain itself.
Hmm.
So if you look
Well,
at like,
before,
yeah,
I'm sorry to cut you off, but just in case anybody out there is kind of like, okay, state proofs, man, I keep hearing this. I know it's great, but what does it even mean? Like, so what do you mean, or what does Algorand mean when they talk about state proofs in the easiest
yeah.
way? Like I'm
I
five.
mean, it's hard. The easiest way of saying it is that you're generating these cryptographic proofs of the state of your blockchain
Cryptographic
by
proofs. Okay. Yep.
so basically proofs that you can verify of what's happening on the blockchain.
Hmm.
And those proofs are generated by the same network that is running the consensus of the blockchain itself, and that's the novelty of it, where the the network of nodes, or stakers are that are also running the Algorand proof of pure proof of stake consensus are also generating these proofs of the blockchain that are very lightweight and portable, and that means
Hmm.
that you can fit these proofs similar to zero knowledge proofs in like Starknet or other implementations to a smart contract in another blockchain,
Hmm.
so that smart contract can ask questions and get and verify if they're true or not using these proofs that were generated by the network itself. They weren't
Right.
generated by five guys you trust, or by economic incentives where you
Right.
have to post something and if you're cheating you get slashed. It's very different, right? It's way more simpler, more secure, and that's where I was saying by having the same security guarantees of the blockchain
Hmm.
itself, right? Where if you look at other bridging technologies, a lot of them are are kind of exposed to these, trusting X validators or multi-sig designs and or economic incentives to achieve what is being achieved here just by using the blockchain itself, and that's kind of the cool aspect of them.
Right. Okay. So then, sorry. So I kind of derailed you from what you were going to say about the question about the settlement Algorand becoming the settlement layer.
Yeah, I mean that's just a cool way of looking at it. I mean,
Hmm.
if you're looking to build on a, let's say, an Ethereum L2,
Hmm.
the main reason you're doing that is to kind of save fees and kind of be scalable, right? Be able to do things, in seconds rather than in 30 seconds or minutes, if you depending on the finality you need. And you can achieve that through L2s on Ethereum today,
Hmm.
but you could also do that through an L1 in Algorand, where you're not
Right.
losing any of the security guarantees of the blockchain itself, because you still need like 80% of the stake to validate to generate these proofs, or
Right.
agree on these proofs, right?
Right. Right.
Um, so so if you're looking, if you're building on L2s instead of like a scalable L1 because of but while still wanting to access like assets on Ethereum, you can use Algorand while you're leveraging state proofs to lock those assets in Ethereum, and like leveraging Algorand for the computational layer before going back to Ethereum. So the only need for an L2 in this case on Ethereum would be if you want to keep like the EVM compatibility, right? If you want to
Right.
use Solidity EVM, then okay, you should use Polygon instead of Algorand for that, because it's a different technology. But if you're not really that concerned about using Solidity or EVM, but rather you want something more scalable that's also composable with an entire ecosystem, which is the
Right.
Algorand ecosystem, then Algorand could become like that settlement layer of other L1s.
Got it. Yeah, because even like Vitalik Buterin, he talks about Polygon, for example, and it's like, well, it's centralized. I mean, at least we have it, but it's a more centralized thing. So if you can in the future trust a decentralized secure layer one like Algorand, a lot of people may choose that. Is the idea, huh?
Exactly, and if you look at Vitalik's statements on why cross-chain applications is not the future, he doesn't believe in cross-chain. He believes in multi-chain,
Right.
but he thinks because of how exposed bridges will be to hacks, where you can do like double spend attacks, among other things, to really affect the state of those bridges by attacking a node or something like that, rather than the entire network. And I
Mm-hmm.
think if you look at it, like the stateful implementations, that's a solution that is directly addressing some of Vitalik's concerns about cross-chain, the viability of cross-chain technologies, because you're actually depending on the security guarantees of the blockchain itself for those proofs, so that like Staples totally create a solution to what Vitalik was said was impossible. So I think people should check both Vitalik's statements about why he doesn't think that's possible, and then look at Staples, and you'll see that there's actually a solution for that.
So how reliant is C3 protocol on state proofs? Is it necessary?
It's gonna be, but it's not like necessary. We're exploring other bridging technologies because we don't wanna delay the roadmap. We wanna launch C3 as soon as we can. And I know state proofs, they're a bit delayed. It's a very complicated product. They're finishing that. Oh no, once they're out, someone also has to build the Ethereum side, like the light client of Algorand in Ethereum, which is gonna be another effort on its own that leverages the state proof. So because of that, we're exploring other bridging technologies. In the meantime, something like Wormhole and others we might use initially while state proofs get ready.
So I actually want to talk about that based on what we were just saying. But so just to be clear for anybody out there, so in order for state proofs to work, these other blockchains are going to have to do something, right? It's not going to just, they're going to have to adopt it as well.
Yeah, it's like I don't know what a good metaphor is, but it's like an outlet in the sense that Algorand is generating these proofs that enable Algorand to export the state to anyone else, right?
Right.
So that anyone else can read them. But then you need other blockchains to adopt similar technologies so that they can also export their state to other blockchains in a secure manner. And that's where the big issue is. And I think that's what Silvio is trying to push others to understand, where I think every blockchain needs to solve this problem on their side, right? I mean, because if everyone has like state proofs or something like that implemented at the node level of their blockchains, then everything would be totally interoperable without requiring any intermediaries, validators, anything. It would be an amazing future. But again, it's very hard to coordinate this, right? It's very hard to convince the Ethereum core developers to prioritize this, right? Especially if it cannibalizes some of their activity. Similarly on Solana, Near has something similar with Rainbow Bridge, but it's a matter of getting more blockchains to support this type of technologies, and that's where you would have an amazing like cross-chain future.
Got it. And so, I mean, the good news is that there's a track record of people taking Silvio's technology and using
exactly. Yeah. So that's
so that's
I hope that continues.
Yeah, we're hoping for that to continue. So
and
you mentioned
Staples also provide like quantum computing protection to your blockchain. So you might as well do that as well, just for in case someone like in the next, I don't know, 30 years gets to build these computers.
Well, and people like to talk about quantum computers and what they may be able to do to Bitcoin. I mean, on a total sidetrack, are you concerned about that? About quantum computers and Bitcoin, for example?
I'm not concerned, but I'm ignorant, right? I have no domain expertise on that. So I know they've always been like 30 years away. So I don't know. I mean,
so 10 years ago they were 30 years away, and now they're still 30 years away. Okay,
exactly. That's kind of what I see. So they are a threat. Like if we get to a point where they can break, this like hashing algorithms, then Bitcoin is gonna have a hard trouble, because Bitcoin is so decentralized that it's impossible to coordinate a change in time, in my opinion, to protect it against quantum computing. But we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, my knowledge of this is thin, but I do think, and I've talked to some people, that the only time that Bitcoin could be vulnerable to a quantum computer is during the time that a transaction needs to be finalized, and which is a problem.
No,
because
I
it
think
takes no. Okay.
If you break like the SHA-256 algorithm, you could derive, like you could find the private key to to a public address that has a 100,000 bitcoins, as an example. I think you could do that with a quantum. So you'd basically be able to kind of, which would, again, it's weird. You just would break but it's I think it's not only an issue of Bitcoin. It's an issue of the entire internet, right? The entire financial world runs on these cryptographic primitives, right? So I guess it's a bigger problem for the entire world, not only for Bitcoin.
So everybody wants to like use it to knock Bitcoin, but it's really, if quantum computers can do what they're saying they could do to Bitcoin, they could do that to the entire financial
Exactly. So
infrastructure.
the entire internet, basically.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. You mentioned real quick. You mentioned Wormhole, and recently they announced that they're coming to
Algorand.
Algorand, right? Which is
Yeah.
good news. I mean, but they were in the news recently for not such good news, right? There was a hack of their bridge to Solana, right?
Yeah, and this is important to kind of clarify. I think Wormhole's
Okay.
hack on Solana wasn't related to the bridge itself, right? Like that was a library that was commonly used by some projects that got updated, and basically it was a smart contract vulnerability that could happen with even any L2 on Ethereum could have the same type of like attack surface that was
Oh,
exploited.
okay.
So I think the cool thing about these bridges is that they're gonna happen regardless, you know. So I think they enjoy this Lindy effect where the the more TVL they have, the longer they've been battle tested, the more secure they become with time. So I'm still bullish on all these bridges, regardless of how centralized another design is. I think
Right.
the centralization component is more so a regulatory risk than a technology risk for like wormhole validators or the
Got it.
guardians as they call them. But I'm not that concerned about that hack. I mean, that could happen to any project, regardless of how decentralized or not it is. Is what I'm trying to get to.
Okay. Okay, so it sounds to me you're like, look, state proofs is where we're headed, and that's where we want to be.
Exactly.
But in the meantime, you know, just like everything, we have to deal with some centralized things, and we want to get this activity going. We want to grow the TVL on Algorand. We want to bridge over
Yeah.
assets, and we want to get going, right? So,
Yeah, and it's also important to highlight like wormhole assets are very liquid across the space, right? So when you have a wormhole ETH, it's an asset that has a lot of liquidity across the industry. It's different
yeah,
than having like Algorand Project One ETH, Algorand Project Two ETH, which is
right.
very like that segregates liquidity. So it's not doesn't make a lot of strategic sense. I rather, if I'm a DeFi builder, I rather just use wormholes assets which are liquid across the space.
Right. And they bridge to what? Solana, Ethereum, now
To like
Algorand,
everything, right? Like
everything.
Binance, Phantom, yeah, Avalanche, Ethereum, Solana. They used to reach Terra. I guess that new Terra will be supported at some point. But that's the cool thing, right? With Wormhole, you get access to all these different assets, and it's just a matter of finding ways to incentivize all these users from other blockchains to come to and play on Algorand's DeFi.
Oh man, I've just realized that we're in trouble with this interview because now I'm like, oh wait, now I want to know what he thinks about the the stable coin, the algorithmic stable UST. So people
Yeah, yeah.
so I mean what do you think of that? What do you think of algorithmic stable coins and what just happened to Terra Luna and that whole thing?
Yeah, I mean it's like I don't believe in algorithmic stablecoins in general. Like the only way an algorithmic stablecoin could work is if you're the central bank itself, right?
Right.
Where you have the power to mint your own currency in a sense. And
Right.
there's a lot of like research on this, and a lot of people were already sounding the alarms on Terra since for a long while.
Yeah.
So this was coming for like those that weren't that like I don't know high on like
Yeah. Yeah.
lunacy, if that makes sense. But I guess this is our learning. It's part of the
Yeah.
history. It's part of like the learning curve we're gonna go through. This is gonna accelerate regulatory frameworks, which is good and bad. As it's good if they do it right. It's bad if they do it fast and wrong.
Right.
But it's this is how like industries evolve, and it's part of the path.
So it sounds like you didn't have a substantial amount of your wealth on the Anchor protocol
No,
on
I did lose. I had some USDs,
oh,
but that wasn't that much. I mean, I did lose some, but yeah,
it's but it's okay. But it's
yeah,
okay.
nothing crazy.
Okay. So let's go to okay. Let's finish up on C3 protocol. So when launch? When are we going to see C3 protocol?
Yeah.
Where are we at?
Well, we're almost done in like a beta version internally.
Hmm.
That kind of works, bridges assets, kind of trades. We're gonna keep building on that, and once we feel it's mature enough, maybe a month or two from now, we'll
Hmm.
release a testnet version for everyone to come in. We'll slowly
Hmm.
invite users to it through those 1 or 2 months before we kind of open the doors to everyone.
Right.
And depending on how well that goes, we'll see when we'll launch to mainnet. Sometime I don't know, late summer, Q3. We'll see. It all
All right.
depends on
So it's,
audits and how
of
things
course.
go.
And now is this something that will have a token? Will C3
Well,
protocol have,
we want to have a token. We just don't know when we're gonna kind of
use it for?
release those plans. I don't know if
Okay.
you give the market environment, but we do want. I think the token is gonna. Well, it's gonna be very unique. I'll have a lot of use cases. I think we want to make sure like early adopters and everything. Everyone is incentivized to not
Use
only
it.
trade there, but they also be rewarded by governing the protocols to some level. So we definitely want to add that.
Cool. All right. So you recently tweeted about EVM compatibility on using layer 2s on layer 1s. Did I
Yeah.
say that right? Yeah. And I found that really compelling. And you used Avalanche and Near as examples. So first off, can you break down what happened at Avalanche and Near that kind of
Yeah,
triggered
I
this
mean,
for you?
first I participated in this hackathon in Miami, and then another one remotely, but like they were this from different blockchains. So I was seeing like what's going on firsthand, right? So I saw literally everyone, like it was out of two, like I don't know, 15 teams were all building on Aurora, and I found that very in Near. I was like, I found that weird, and then I started investigating, asking people around, and I started realizing that this is weird, right? Like everything's happening on Aurora now. Whatever TVL is in Near is kind of from products that were there from before almost, right? And they just kept going, but like everything new is happening on Aurora.
Mm,
So I started going through the rabbit hole on that sense. Also looking at what Avalanche is doing with the P chain, their X chain, seeing their plans in the future regarding how they want to create like this EVM plus plus, which adds functionality or improves the EVM. Like it addresses a lot of these issues that the EVM has. And I came to this conclusion, looking at like this activity, that it's a big risk. I mean, a lot like Near is known today to be like being very good at convincing a lot of these projects to come and build on Near, right? Regardless if it's in Aurora or Near, they're adding a lot of grants, giving a lot of money out, and that's fine. I mean, that's kind of like the cost of acquisition for these L1s. But all of that activity is going to this EVM L2, and it's an L2 in
right.
the sense like it's different if you build like I don't know a compiler, like a high level language that's like Solidity, limited version of Solidity that compiles to TIL as an example. Maybe that has a different like implications. But if it's just an L2 where everything is
Yeah.
happening on an EVM, and then every now and then you're sending like roll-ups or like proofs of the state of that to the L1, then there's really the L1 is not benefiting at all from that activity,
Yeah.
especially if you look at like Algorand, which is a completely new technology, new way of doing everything from the consensus to the way TIL works to the AVM.
Mm-hmm.
And all these networks require network effects to work out, right? If 5 years from today everyone's not using all these unique features of Algorand, then there's gonna be no need for Algorand, right? I mean, like
Right.
EVM is gonna win, and like you'll have probably 5 chains conquering most of the activity, and probably one or two of those will be EVM based for certain
Mm-hmm.
reasons. But apart from that, why if you really want to build on an EVM, you might as well go to Ethereum, to Polygon, or to like I don't know Avalanche, right? Depending on how they evolve their EVM.
Right.
But and I don't see a use case. I mean, I'm talking about a world in which incentives are gone, right? Like
Yeah.
it's established. You have
Right.
this,
Right.
networks established now. People have to come for the merits of the technology and keep evolving, like Linux or others, where just the technology keeps evolved by the same users that require
Right.
like that are maintaining it. And if you don't have network effects of those unique, of your technology, which is different
Yeah.
than EVM, then you'll lose the race. But
Right.
if what we're seeing in the market is that if you have all these builders focus on the EVM through an L2, then no one's gonna use your L1 features, and then you like then you wouldn't be able to like you wouldn't have like AlgoFi and Fox
Yeah.
Finance and whatever composing with each other because everything's happening on the EVM-L2, and then like you lose all this interoperability and the cool stuff of blockchain. So then you lose the war or like the game, I guess, and that's my concern. And I say
So
this because when I talk, sorry to interrupt, Cooper, but
no, of course.
when I mention all this, I come from a point where I'm investing my entire time on Rand Labs as an example, right? So
Mhm.
I'm not only like I hold algos and everything, but this is like if anyone in here is like exposed to the success of Algorand or like investing a lot of time and making and wanting it to win, it's me, I would say, right? As well as like everyone else,
Yeah.
but we're very focused on the Algorand technology. So in that sense, I'm trying to make sure it wins, and
Yeah.
my thoughts come from like that point of view.
Of course. So, just so I understand, and I think I do, and make sure everybody else understands. So, basically, what's kind of happening right now is Near is giving a lot of money to people to build, theoretically on Near, but everyone's
Correct.
actually coming over, taking that money and building on Aurora. And then,
Exactly.
and so that's EVM, right? So, that's a layer two EVM on Near. And what could eventually happen to Near is that all these projects is just kind of like a placeholder until the merge or whatever happens over at Ethereum. And then if Ethereum kind of figures it out, then
Exactly.
and then
Or
they're
even
not,
Polygon. I mean, like
yeah, or
any
Polygon.
other L2, right?
Right.
And it's important to note, like, yeah, they're spending all this money to bring, and it's very easy to build an EVM. There's like hundreds of bulletproof libraries out there. So for developers, it's so easy to just port code, build new things, just reusing a lot of code out there. So it's when you get like a good check to build something on here, it's way easier to just do it on Aurora, given this how much tools there are for on the EVM.
Right.
But also like you have like let's say Near, even our Algorand as an example, these projects are spending hundreds of millions of dollars building all these novelties on their
Yeah.
L1, and but then they're spending all these millions of dollars, you know, and driving users to an EVM L2 that are not like at all leveraging all the novelties and money you spend and R&D you spend building them, right? So that's
Right.
kind of where the risk is, where you're
Yeah.
kind of throwing a lot of this value that you spent so many years building and innovating on to the trash by making it so easy, like just going through that shortcut, right? And it would be like if Ethereum didn't exist, if Polygon didn't exist, or these better alternatives that might have a better future on the EVM
Right.
side, then okay, you should adopt like an EVM NL2. But like when you have so many EVM alternatives, right? You have like 20, maybe more. I don't know. I think you'll see like what happened with Binance Smart Chain, right? Like Binance Smart Chain had this massive success. Everyone was building there. It was scalable EVM, but like the incentives dwindled, everything dwindled, and everyone's going back to like Polygon, what I'm seeing right now, right? So I would
Hmm.
expect a lot of these EVM alternatives to have a similar, you know, I don't know, pump and dump drop that the
Yeah.
BSC experienced.
That makes sense. I know we were actually we were together. We got lost with Kelly in
Yeah,
Denver, and what I remember, and but we there was an announcement about trying to encourage, and that was the Ethereum conference, but we're trying to encourage you know EVM compatibility, EVM interoperability. Do you? What are your thoughts on how Algorand's approaching it currently?
yeah. I mean, like again, it makes sense. I mean, if you need to act fast and do like figure things out, I mean it's a very like logical thing to incentivize someone to build an EVM on your blockchain, right? It's like, hey, there's so many projects, let's do it. And then so I think that's what happened. I mean, and it's fine, that's what everyone's doing, like but now after really, if you really think about it, at least this is my opinion, right? I might be totally wrong, but from
Yeah.
my perspective, from my own like due diligence and research, I believe now that that's a mistake. And I might be totally wrong, but I just think like Algorand is here. It's been lagging on adoption compared to other less noble blockchains, and a portion of that is also because of the trade-offs they had to make, right? Like there's a reason why TIL is the way it is. The AVM is there's a reason why these limitations are imposed. And it's because Algorand is trying to win like the long-term game, right? By making sure they're making the right decisions now, so that the blockchain has this 4-second latency forever or less, and like you never go over that.
Right.
Else you'll experience things like what Solana is experiencing today, where they're let's just build it, let's just get people to work on it, and then we'll figure it out later. And I think
Right.
that's a huge mistake, in the sense that maybe they don't figure it out on time, and people get, even like yesterday, Solana was down all day, right? So
Yeah.
so like same thing with Terra as an example. So I think like what's happening in the market is all these shortcuts taken are or like they're all those debts are coming back, right? So
Yeah.
Algorand has done the right but hard decision of like not taking shortcuts and dealing everything right, even though it might push adoption years down the line.
Yeah.
It's a risk they had to take. They took it, but now if you add the EVML2, I think that strategy might get hampered, if that makes sense. So, and that's my concern. I think it's inevitable now. I think EVML2s are coming. There was a massive grant out there. I know projects are building them, coming and building it. So at this point, it's a matter of maybe educating the community and the ecosystem about these risks or threat, so that we can somehow protect these risks, right, or hedge
Yeah.
against them. And as long as we're alert about this and we try to do something about it, hopefully it's not going to be that bad.
Right. And then, yeah, exactly. I mean, so it sounds like you're saying, okay, so these layer twos are going to come, and EVM, interoperability will happen. But the major risk that you are trying to say is like, okay, look, what we don't want to turn out is like we have a deal with FIFA or something, and then everything is built on this layer two.
Yeah, that would be absurd, right?
That would be the worst thing ever. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. And that makes so much sense. And so
And
it's
then
going to,
you decrease the barriers of exit, right? Like if you're an
yeah,
EVM and you get tired and someone bribes you in a new blockchain or someone else, you
yeah,
just,
you can just
hey, let
leave.
me take this code and put it there.
Yeah.
So it's just bad in many sense, I guess.
Yeah.
So as maybe if we put it there, but we avoid putting incentives in place, like we don't reward DeFi there or anything like that, like we don't put
Right.
resources to that.
Yeah.
That would be
Well,
cool, but
yeah,
we'll see.
that makes sense. I mean, it makes sense that they've already rewarded some of this building to happen, and then now that it's here, it's available to use to communicate with the Algorand blockchain in a way that's very cheap and fast and everything.
Exactly.
And then if you're gonna reward anything, it's going to be stuff that's being built
Yeah, on the
on the layer
AVM.
one, on the
Exactly.
AVM. Well, I agree with that. That's for sure.
Yeah.
What else was I going to say about that before I moved on? Maybe not. Maybe not. Okay, so let's move on to governance, because this is the topic of the day. Everybody, starting, I guess it was yesterday, you could start voting on this. And, there's a proposal to incentivize basically DeFi use, which will give certain DeFi protocols double voting power, not double rewards, but double voting power. If they have a certain TVL, I think it was 10 million, but now they've lowered it to 1 million. I mean, maybe you understand this a little better than I do right now, because it does seem to be kind of changing as we go. But I don't know, maybe just we'll have a discussion about it. But your initial thoughts on XGov and this new proposal to incentivize DeFi use?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's better to start with like before that, like some thoughts on overall the what's
Governance in
going on in the
general?
ecosystem, right? That
Yeah,
kind of
let's do that.
maybe that all that discussion that took place like in the Algorand forum in Twitter,
Yeah,
maybe like had some effect into these measures, right, that are putting out to
right,
vote.
right.
At least I believe so.
Okay.
So basically, we've been seeing, like maybe a quick recap. I'm sure most already understand that this like discussion, but as a quick recap, you have this governance rewards, which is 200 and I don't know 280 million algos per year being diluted, right? You have
Yeah.
like an inflation rate of 280 million algos per year. It's not, people need to understand and think about those concepts, like whatever. I don't know what the supply is in general, but your algos that you're holding, like someone's taking the decision to dilute them for these measures. Let's start with like those
Right.
like first principles thinking, right? So
Yeah, and
so then
that's
you
and
have
that
10 algos,
yeah.
and you're kind of diluting those 10 algos to like 9 algos. I'm just exaggerating for simplicity, to achieve what with this new program, which is rewarding people that are participating in governance.
Yeah.
All right. So then, like, but the caveat here is that there's no requirements, right? You're not locking your algos. You just have to send a text to the blockchain saying, "Hey, I want to be a governor," and as long as you don't decrease your balance, you'll get rewarded, right? But there's nothing you have to do. You can still hold those algos with BitGo, Coinbase custody, with your Nano Ledger. You can memorize those algos. There's nothing you have to do to sacrifice on the custody side. Similarly, you don't have to lock them in any smart contract at all, right? So, which would be cool if you could have some, if you like Algorand Foundation locks them in a smart contract, it gives you an IOU. Maybe that can open the world of possibilities, but still, there's no risk at all. So you're
Yeah.
giving 280 million algos out, diluting everyone with no risk being taken.
Right.
And that kind of creates this bad dynamics in which you have all these institutional investors, which are the majority holders, right? Like, there should be no doubt that these whales are the ones that decide these measures. It doesn't matter, and this might be a little bit polemic, but it doesn't matter what you, Cooper, are gonna vote or what I'm gonna vote. It's
I
the
know.
whales who are gonna decide, right? At the end of the
Yeah.
day, which is the first thing I don't like, because whales are not taking custody risk. They're not taking smart contract risk. They're just holding and governing and
Yeah.
earning
A
280
ton
million, a
with
big
no
portion of that 280 million algos, right?
yeah,
Uh,
at zero risk. They can just
Correct.
hold that on their ledger or however they're holding it and just be, while we're getting 300 algos or whatever it is, they're getting many more than that. Right.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
my concern is like not only that, but like you have DeFi alive now on Algorand, and like Algo Fi,
Yeah.
Tiny Man, Fox Finance, BackFi, all these guys are doing a great job,
Yeah.
and but they are like battling like, which is was already a steep mountain. Now it's an even steeper mountain, given that you are competing against a sharp ratio of infinity, right? Where
Hmm.
you're receiving 7% APY with zero risk. So the Sharpe ratio is infinite compared to whatever custody risks, smart contract risks. Even if it's 30%, the Sharpe ratio will never be close to infinity.
Right.
So it's very hard to get these DeFi protocols to attract a lot of these institutional players. So their TVL is lower. It's harder to attract value to their protocols because they're competing against their own blockchain, which is crazy, right? If you're building a DeFi, you're spending you're investing your time, resources, sweat, like
Yeah.
brain cells in building in this network,
Yeah.
and the network is cannibalizing your own like efforts. Then it's like, okay, this is a big no-no, at least for me. And I think
Right.
those dynamics need to be fixed. And that's what I was, trying to talk about in the community. Like, there was a forum about it, and the discussion over there was great. I think it's very evident that the community really understands this problem and are very like they agree, at least from what I saw in the forums. There's an overall consensus that this is right. I mean, this is an
Right.
issue, and it needs to be fixed, and that's great. And I think Foundation knows that, and I think they see that, and I think these measures, in my opinion, the current ones, do not address these problems at all. I mean, just giving DeFi protocols more voting power has
It's
nothing to do with the root cause of this problem.
right.
Um, I don't know if I have no, like, I don't talk to like to Foundation about this, so I have no idea what the logic is. Maybe it's because they need more time to
Yeah. To figure
digest
it
this
out.
information, and then the next voting session they'll come up with a better solution. That could be it. Maybe they
Hmm.
need to give the community more voting power so that the next session can be passed, even though the whales might vote against it. I don't know. I'm just speculating here.
Right.
But in general, in my opinion, like, I would just shut the rewards altogether. Like, people can govern with their algos without having to get rewards for it, in my opinion, and just
Right.
refocus that 280 million inflation towards better use, developing more tooling, right? Like, developing on AVM until it's hard. Like, there's a lot of more work need to be done to get to the levels of solidity and the EVM. So I would spend 280 million algos a year in that, right? or 280 million algos in incentivizing wormhole assets, as an example, right? I would like, if I was, the owner of Algorand, I would put like $280 million for wormhole assets
Yeah.
a year, and then like all wrapped ETH would get 100% APY on Algorand. All Solana would get, like, all souls would get 100% APY on Algorand. That's what I would do, just to really. We're in a war at this level, right? So you really need to be as disruptive as possible, and I think that's a better use of our inflation. If that makes sense, because
Got
this
it.
impacts everyone here, and
Yeah.
we have to be smart in how we allocate that.
Yeah. So, I mean, all governance really is doing right now is keeping whales invested, essentially. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, and
yeah.
these are whales, that are gonna be there, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah. They're
doubt a lot of these whales are going anywhere with or without the reward. So
right.
you're just inflating everyone's stake,
Are we
like.
at a point where it's like, in order to do what you said, wouldn't we have to vote for that to happen? And then now, because of the way it's structured, the whales have control, so they'd never vote for that. I mean, that sounds bad.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, but it's, I mean, the whales have a huge stake in Algorand, right? As in
Yeah,
Algo. So I mean, they must know that 280 million algos well spent can like 10x your algo price,
yeah,
right? So it's like 10x with 280 million algos well spent compared to
right,
7-8%, right? So
right,
if
right,
you
right,
look at it in those eyes, I would imagine like whales would agree with, like, okay, maybe there's a better way of using this money
right.
to increase the price of the algo.
So then, with where we're at right now today, I mean, you said that it doesn't really address the problem that you see. So how are you voting on this?
I don't know. I haven't thought about it. Again, like, I, me, I only vote just to make sure I don't lose my rewards. I
Yeah,
know my vote will have no impact. I know the
yeah,
community's vote won't have any impact. At least that's
yeah.
I think. I have to look at the stats, but I'm pretty sure about that. So in
Okay.
general, I don't know. I have to look at the measures. Probably Valorant Foundation is suggesting we vote on those options. I'm probably gonna follow them. I don't wanna make their job even harder than it already is, right?
Yeah.
But in general, I mean, I'm more interested in what's gonna happen after this rather than this one. I
Okay.
don't think this changes too much.
Anything. Yeah.
The I don't think the TVL is gonna go up because of this measure, even if option A passes. It doesn't really tackle the root cause. So overall, this doesn't change like the dynamics going on in DeFi and Algorand.
So, I mean, and you speculated a little on it in the beginning of this, was that it's potentially they're giving more voting power to DeFi in order to pass future things.
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe,
I don't
right?
know, but I still it's gonna be so, like, I mean, you need billions
Yeah, yeah,
of
yeah.
algos to change that, right? So I don't know.
Well,
I would
and
imagine.
there's not an infinite amount either. I mean, I think it's, we're almost up to 7 billion in circulating. So there's only less than a third left to be released. So that's 3 billion. If you're giving out 280 million every year, that's,
Yeah, man.
that's not that long. I mean,
We have to,
2030s.
like, we have 3 billion algos left to win the race.
Yeah.
That's how we have to see this, right? So how are we gonna win the top 5 block, like, technologies out there with
Yeah.
3 billion algos left? And
Well, and
it's
we
a very
have,
hard problem to solve. I
it's a
mean,
hard
like,
problem, but it does seem like, I mean, I'm in a bubble, I help, I help in the bubble. I'm over here trying to talk and entertain and have fun. So I obviously believe this, but I do truly believe that, Algorand is setting itself up in a real way. I mean, if you mentioned it earlier, Solana, I mean, how many times are people really going to watch Solana go down and think that
exactly, man. It's
this is the future? And then you have things like,
like
like what we
Luna
heard,
blowing up. I mean, that's an
Luna.
entire planet disappeared.
Luna just blew up. Solana can't stop going down. Cardano moves at the slowest
No,
pace.
yeah. So
Yeah.
so
So
you have few, right? And near is
yeah.
now, Aurora won near, so
So
we'll see.
near,
That's now
yeah, near is just
Aurora
being,
versus Ethereum Avalanche. So we're
yeah.
not even talking about near anymore. So
Yeah, near is just being eaten by Ethereum, right? And
exactly.
so
So that's how I mean, Algorand. This is like the year where the best technologies are going to showcase their capabilities, right? You're seeing
Yeah.
everyone going down, and that's positions Algorand greatly. I think a lot of these trade-offs are going to pay off. You know what, like the engineering team at Algorand has been doing a great job, and I think they just have to continue on that path and making sure, you know, we find a way to build all the tooling necessary around it so that, you know, leveraging all this technology is super easy, and there's a lot of resources. I mean, we're close. It's like we're not that far. It's just
Yeah.
more work and more time, and we should get there.
Yeah. I mean, yes, it's hard to ignore FIFA and Nigeria and, you know, El Salvador. There's a lot, you know, Algorand's being used. And so that's a good thing. What was I going to say? Okay. So I feel like we did basically what I wanted to do. Now, just for anybody out there, just to go back to, well, I'm going to ask you two more things. Let's go back to C3 protocol right now. And maybe just to make it simple, explain how maybe a C3 protocol is different than some of the things that are already exist on Algorand.
I think it's different in the sense that the user experience will work this way, which is what's cool about it. You just log into an exchange, which will be C3, C3.io. You'll have an exchange. You'll have spot trading, leverage. You'll be able to lend money and earn APY. You'll be able to borrow that money to execute trades with leverage. You also have perpetuals in the future. So it's gonna look like Binance UI in a sense.
Right.
The only difference is that instead of logging in with an email and a password, you'll log in with any wallet. It doesn't matter if it's a Phantom wallet, if MetaMask wallet, Algorand wallet. We'll support all the wallets that from all the blockchains, and that's kind of the user experience. If you think about it, that's very, very revolutionary because you won't have to change wallets. Meaning that if you're using MetaMask, you'll be able to execute trade with MetaMask. If you're using Phantom wallet, you'll execute trades with Phantom wallet, or with Pera, or with MyAlgo.
Right.
And that's the cool thing about it, where you were completely disrupting that custody side, where we're enabling anyone to custody their assets however they want and execute trades however they want, without even knowing that Algorand is working behind the scenes, without even knowing what bridge is working behind the scenes. It's all gonna be exacerbated from the user. And the design of it is the novelty of how this is accomplished, which we'll be releasing more details on this. But that's what I think is disrupted. It's like a global exchange that has no counterparty risk, that is accessible. You can use a custodian to access it and delegate you can like deposit collateral using a custodian and sign a delegation key so that a hot wallet can execute trades but cannot withdraw money. So we're putting a lot of efforts into all these solutions so that everyone can custody their assets in whatever blockchain, whatever wallet they want, and execute trades on this like global matching system.
Wow.
So that's what gets me very excited. I really think we're gonna have a way to compete against centralized exchanges through C3. So I'm not very concerned or looking at like what's going on DeFi. I'm more concerned about like how can we improve on how centralized exchanges are acquiring users, and how can we compete against those.
Wow. That's amazing. And so is there a competitor out there? Is there anywhere else? Is there anything like this other than like a Binance and,
well, DYDX is a similar architecture where they are using an off-chain matching system, but they're using Starknet for the scalability. We're using Algorand for our settlement instead of an L2. That's kind of the closest design I've seen out there. Mango Markets is similar, where in Solana, where they have this very novel risk engine that enables you to cross margin across different products. It's all on Solana L1. It's a central limit order book on chain. But they have a very similar risk engine than the one we're using. So on C3, you'll be able to like open a perpetuals and a position and a spot position and be able to counterbalance each other on the margin requirement. So that's going to enable you to do more as a sophisticated trader. So that's kind of a very similar design on the risk part, not on the settlement part, but on the risk engine. So that's another one that comes to mind.
Got it. Well, that's exciting. So that's all happening this year. So that's it. That's an exciting thing. So we'll kind of settle this. We'll finish this with, there's a lot of technical upgrades also coming to Algorand. I know you don't work at Algorand Inc. or anything like that, but I'm sure you know more than I do. And how close are we to transactions? To 10,000 transactions per second. How close are we getting to finality to 2 seconds or whatever it is? And are you and you said state proofs?
Yeah, I'm not. Maybe I have the same information as you do in the sense that I'm not very. I haven't asked recently about those timelines, but this year a lot of this should be done, right? Like the staples should be done this year. I've seen a lot of like GitHub merges in the state proof side, so I imagine that's gonna come close.
That's what I saw some guys on Discord talking about. They were seeing on GitHub a lot of state proof stuff.
So that should be soon. I know they're adding like these boxes on the AVM, like basically allows you to access like unlimited storage, which is gonna solve a lot of pain points for developers. That should be out in, I don't know, 3 months or so, maybe more.
Okay.
And again, everything I would like maybe Paul is the right person to answer this, but I would estimate most of this should be done this year.
If
not all.
And it just occurred to me, it's like, so state proofs can go live and can be ready, but that still isn't everything that you need because you need all these other everywhere else.
Not only that, but we need the build a light client on Ethereum, right?
Yeah, that's what
which is the one consuming the state proof. So that's gonna be another big project by itself. Not as big, but it's gonna be important, right? So it's gonna add to the timelines. Maybe that's gonna take, I don't know, 3 months or so to build. So yeah, just have that in mind before they actually become usable for bridging.
Got it. I mean, so can Algorand go around and build these light clients on all these different blockchains and not have to wait for these blockchains to decide to do so?
Yeah, they could. I'm not sure they're prioritizing that. I don't think so, but they could. Maybe what I would expect to happen is like blockchains like bridges like Wormhole and others might improve their design by leveraging these state proof or state proof like technologies in the future. At least that's what I would think will happen in the market, where you have these bridges now leveraging these more advanced technologies while maintaining like leveraging their brand as well, right? So you'll still use Wormhole, but instead of having like 19 guardians, you might be using state proofs, but using the Wormhole bridge.
Got it. All right. And I'm bouncing around a little bit because I know we're about to close this up. But so when it comes to governance, oh Jesus, I just lost my train of thought. Oh, that's what it was. So when it comes to governance, do you kind of wish that this never happened? Because what's the point, really, if it's
I think it's been like it's been way more negative than positive for the ecosystem, in my opinion.
Is this? I always assumed, and maybe it's misdirected, but I always assumed that it had something to do with regulation and further decentralizing. And so, the foundation isn't they can point to decentralization rather than the foundation for a lot of the decision making. But I don't know.
Maybe I have no idea. I mean, maybe actually, if I would say having governance makes it like increases the risk of the regulatory side than decreasing it, right? It's one thing to just being used as the way it's being used. It has less of a security nature of it, I believe. I'm not a lawyer, I have no idea, but in any case, I would think that would increase the risk instead of not. But maybe that was the case. I really don't know. Maybe it's just they were just trying to find a better way to have the community speak out on what they want to do, and this was the first attempt. I think there's better ways of doing this.
Yeah.
All right. And people need to remember, like, decentralization is not necessarily good. Look at what's going on with Ethereum, right? It's been like 100 years they're trying to implement this ETH 2.0. We don't really know how well it's going to go. And it's because of how decentralized they are, right? Like the more decentralized the protocol is, the harder it becomes to execute.
Yeah.
At least on the governance side. So I think, guys like, I don't know, maybe Cooper, you might know more. I might know more. Algorand might know more what a better strategy might be than just crowdsourcing that's for, and most people won't even be informed, and they'll just want to make money and vote on anything as long as they
Yeah.
make money.
Yeah.
So at some point, I don't really like. It's hard to coordinate when you have a lot of these big decisions being made across different entities across the world.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people also say that when it comes to like DAOs and things like that as well.
Yeah,
So,
I mean,
so it is hard when everybody has a say. It's hard, you know. You got a big family and you're trying to figure out what movie to go to. I mean, it's difficult, you know.
yeah, exactly.
So, all right. Well, we'll end it there. You know, we're about an hour. I thank you so much for taking the time. Is there anything else? Did I miss anything? What do you think?
No, I mean, I don't think so. Just, reminding everyone, it's important that you guys keep an eye on defending the L1 whenever these
Yeah.
L2 EVMs come in. Make sure you kind of speak out and protect the AVM, protect the novelties from the L1, right? Making sure those are being prioritized over everything else. And on the governance side, speak out as well. I mean, it's make sure you kind of you make sure you understand you're getting diluted.
Yeah. Well, and
Uh,
that's another thing that I was thinking. You know, I've said many times on my channel is that, like, look, it's almost a protective measure to participate in governance, because if you're just holding, you know, Algo, I expect participation rewards are gone. You're just being diluted. You better go
exactly.
grab the Algo, because this isn't you know, it's not
Yeah,
doing
that's
you any
true.
favors if you're not. So
Yeah. And also one other thing, maybe we should touch upon this in a future day, is like,
yeah.
I've seen a lot of discussion about incentivizing nodes,
Yeah.
like relay nodes, participation nodes. I think
Right.
that's a mistake, in my opinion,
Okay.
and we can talk about it. But uh, like the unique thing about Algorand proof of stake is that it's the only consensus apart from proof of work that doesn't end up with centralization of money and centralization of the stake, because it
Right.
doesn't reward stake, right? You like, given how amazing and simple that consensus is, it doesn't require economic incentives. So if we add incentives, then we're contaminating a lot of what makes Algorand so unique and decentralized, right? Where a lot of Bitcoin maximalists bash about proof of stake because it leads to the same dynamics that centralized systems of Web2 lead, where people with power retain the power over the long run because they keep earning the power or the votes.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but Algorand is the only one out there that doesn't like suffer this issue
Right.
because it doesn't reward stake. So it's very
Right.
important to have that in mind when having those discussions about changing governance rewards to maybe incentivizing node runners. You might be kind of attacking one of the things that make Algorand most unique.
Now, I mean, obviously, the idea behind that is to increase the decentralization and incentivize more and more nodes, because with no incentive, then, you know, then it remains small. And so I guess people are concerned about a small amount of
Yeah,
nodes. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, the Algorand is more important the stake than the nodes. I mean, it's important to have the stake decentralized, and more so that stake participating. What's going on in Algorand is that a lot of the stake is not participating, and that's bad
Yeah.
because it becomes cheaper to attack the blockchain. So we
Right.
have to, yeah, I agree. Like, if we had some incentives, they have to be very well thought. Maybe like incentivizing the hardware rather than the stake. I don't know. We have to, like, there needs to be thought put into place for this. Again, to make it very unique, retain that uniqueness of being the only proof of stake consensus that doesn't centralize stake through time, but rather just decentralizes it through time.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's another conversation. I won't put you through it, but I mean that makes a lot of sense. It's difficult. That is a difficult thing because, like you said, with not a lot participating, with then I guess it does make it vulnerable to attack. But
Yeah, or like that, it becomes cheaper to attack, basically.
cheaper attack to attack. So, but I mean, as you see it, you know, we all say it. You know, Algorand's never been down. It can't fork. It's, you know, it's never been attacked. Like, do you see that Algorand is vulnerable in any of these ways, or
No,
do you?
but I mean, at some point, not now, right? But in the future, if you have $1 trillion or $100 billion of TVL,
Yeah.
And you can attack the network with, I don't know, $300 million or so. That becomes an issue, right? So it's not an issue today, but you making like it might become an issue in the future once the consensus is controlling a lot of value or protecting a lot of value.
So then is it, you hear about Bitcoiners running Bitcoin nodes and they're not earning
it's
any
like
Bitcoin,
right? Like Bitcoin, like full nodes control the network, right? As proven in the block wars in 2017. So full nodes control the Bitcoin network. They have thousands and thousands of them around the world, and they have no incentives. There's no incentives to run a full node of Bitcoin, and people run it because they believe in the network. They're supporters of the network, and I think similarly that's how Algorand should evolve, where you're running your participation node, but more importantly, you have to put your stake to participate. That's the important thing, right? That people, if you have a stake in a ledger or somewhere, just try and run a node and put your stake to participate. That might help.
Right. That's what that was my exact point, is that you hear Bitcoiners always run a full node and they're getting no incentive. Exactly. So it could be in our best interest, but you're saying it's not all that helpful to run a node with, with 300 algo or something like that. So
exactly. I mean, on the security side, right? I mean,
on the security side,
it's
about
important.
being
It's an important variable, obviously, to make like the consensus more hardware running the consensus. But I mean, on the given Algorand's design, what's more important is the stake itself. So at least making sure whales put that extra effort to sign a simple participation key and put it out, like, we need more of that, right? And maybe we should also work with like the tools. Maybe MyAlgo should make it very easy to do that. I don't know. We have to find ways to, but it's not a problem today. This might be a problem like years down the line as we grow in TVL, just to make sure like people are not like very alarmed.
Yeah. Algorand's not at threat of being attacked. But now, forgive my ignorance here, but can you run a node, a participation node, with your stake and still participate in governance?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, 100%, right? So it's
no problem.
Because
you sign a participation key, and that's it, right? Like the stake remains in your wallet. And the participation key is what's used to identify how much of that stake should be used for the lottery.
Okay. And then, another thing now, and then I really will let you go, is and I know that I think Pact is working on it, but like, it would be real nice if in Algorand DeFi, we could use Ledger. We could use our ledgers.
Oh yeah, man. That's,
we need that.
We've been trying to work on that since like for years now, literally, right? We got to the point where we just gave up because you have to convince the guys working on Algorand Inc. firmware, like, because you have the Algorand firmware app, so you have to work and convince the Algorand guys to work on it, and then you also have to convince the Ledger guys to post push the updates. It was a mess. We decided it wasn't worth the battle. But now I think they're realizing it was very important, and I hopefully Pac will get that done soon. But I can tell you that's been a massive, that's had a massive impact on TVL. I am sure about that.
100%. When we're talking about, when we're talking about whales participating in DeFi, if they can't use the ledger,
it's absurd. I mean,
and then
not to bring. That's the thing. Like, I would spend 280 million algos. Instead of that, maybe I would spend 280 million algos solving this problem, and that might get you to a higher TVL, right?
Yeah. Well, and I did see that Pact is incorporating fire blocks, which should be a good step, right? That should be.
That's a great thing. I mean, everyone should do that. That's how you get TVL up. I mean, whales have a huge amount of money. That's like C3. We're like at the MVP. We're finding ways so that custodians can actually delegate their keys so that a hard wallet can trade without losing collateral. I would incentivize other DeFi protocols to think that way, right? Like that. Whales have a lot of money, and you should make sure you also are thinking how to make their life easier.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there we go. Thank you so much, Michel, for coming on. And you're welcome anytime. So when C3 protocol goes live, maybe you'll choose to come on here and we can talk about it.
Definitely, cool, Brandon. Thank you for this. That's been very fun, man.
All right. It was a lot of fun. Thanks, man.
Bye-bye.